Cancers. What's up, loves? Oh, funny. This is going to be weird. I've never done it on multiple screens before. So, hi, hello, welcome. Let me know if you can hear me. All right, because I am trying this slightly differently. If one of them doesn't work, it'll be on the other one. No, it'll always be on YouTube. Sorry, TikTok. Sorry, TikTok. But what a world, what a world. Happy new moon in Cancer. I believe it was like 10 a.m. in the UK already. Already it could. So, high feelings, high energy, high heat, high vibration, radiation, all kinds of things. The moon is in Cancer and with the sun and Jupiter, and Mercury, no less, which is interesting. And there's an interesting watery aspect to all of this that very much zooms in and out and goes back and forth. I think with Mercury in particular, just the natural qualities of it as an element very much leans into its capacity to communicate, and ultimately with the self. With the sun, we could be looking at total internal reflection, illumination, um, beyond anything that we've comprehended before. Conversely, because it's in Cancer, and that's deep waters could also be dark mirror, black mirror, which isn't a bad thing. It's very much white hole or black hole. They both contain galaxies, and contain information. It is simply a matter of what you do with it. I do think very literally that can be a lot of intrusive thoughts and mind getting astray from us. Or very literally, Google total internal reflection. It is a scientific phenomenon with water and information input of lasers and sound frequency, which, if you've seen my video about a painting, also very relevant. Um, let's see. Liquid mirror. Oh, there's also new and pervasive science about water and its capacity to compute or storage of memory. And I think that is, again, a reoccurring concept within this watery conversation. But also, maybe perhaps more, also in a literal sense, developments of knowledge to be had about the fascia of the system and the ways in which that it functions much like rivers in the system, sending information back and forth, which is also very true of literal qualities of nature, storms that have been occurring, hurricanes that have been landing, and progressive deterioration of dam structures along the river, at least in the United States. So that'll be interesting to see, because I do get this emotional dam breaking. So that could be literal or not, right? Um, Oddly enough, Juno, Vesta, and Blackland Lilith are in an eighth house, at least from the U.S. perspective. Scorpio house, death house, which has everything to do with history and memory as well. Maybe not so much a watery element. I mean, Scorpio is a water, but it's and a dark water actually. But there's an ethereal aspect to it too. Maybe more the space in between. Jupiter's opposition geometrically would be Sag and Capricorn. And though there may not be any major commentary happening there, I do think it very much shouts new rules, new games. And that is like new rule, new game, which is funny because high school never ends, and the game stays the same, the players change, yada yada yada. But everything is changing. Lots of things are changing. We're changing our minds about a lot of things. Hopefully, coming to understandings. And so I think Sag and Capricorn very much lead and direct into that space, um, with Jupiter's focus, or can, and that will come up again, because there's very much a directional pattern here. Um, this triangulates, these water energies triangulate into or with nodal energies in Pisces, which is again water energy, deep water energy, water memory, um perhaps even like deltas on this river metaphor that are occurring again. Rivers also carry messages. The water carries messages. It carries all the songs that we sing to it, and it remembers those things and it speaks those things to us. I think that's very much why a lot of people around waterfalls are sort of compelled to these, emotional states, whether that's it brings you to tears from beauty or from sorrow and grief. um, I've had interesting conversations with people who can very much relate to that and have heard or felt something from the water, um, be it stories of lineage past or stories from the land, or conversely, when strong waters are like, jump, don't you wanna? And that's very much the ways in which spirits beckon to, like trauma. And I think it's because you understand. Beyond misery loves company. It's looking for understanding, and when we have the capacity to face it, um, then it's not the evil intrusive thoughts, the bad intrusive thoughts. It's very much an open conversation where you have a capacity to shift perspective. Kind of like if you look at something and you close your left eye, and then you look at the same thing and you close your right eye, and it sort of shifts because the two work together. Which again is going to come up in something else. Um, what else? What else? Programming water, new science, water memory, rivers, synapse, neurologically. Also, this is also recent or fairly newer, more prevalent discoveries about fascia in the body and the ways in which it holds neurological information and transmits that as well. And again, the stories, the capacity, the current. This is also why Wi-Fi networks will be, or lines will be installed underneath water, or underneath bodies of water in a lot of areas, um, because it's a conduit. You learn that from Pokemon. I forget which like OG movie it was, but when Pikachu like uses the water to shoot his vibe. Um, da 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 da. It will also directly reflect consciousness and unconsciousness. I did a reading on TikTok for fun, that very much talked about the energy body of the world, and sometimes I think the ways in which, more often than not, the ways in which we move unconsciously in, what's the words I'm looking for? Impulsive, compulsive. Ah, it's always on the edge. It's always on the edge. Impulsive or compulsive versus mindful or meditative, and the ways in which that can ultimately change the direction of anything. That's why physics experiments have their black box. Um, Saturn and Neptune very much have a conversation also going, that that carries stories, but beyond time and space, beyond physical water, beyond just current that we can see or feel. Um, because Neptune is sort of a spacey energy, very out there. Um, very much a deeper or heavier, more dense capacity. Um, and Saturn has a hell of a capacity, but it's like quick, fast lessons too. Like a metronome in comparison to Neptune. Um, this carries memories forward. There's a pacing to it, a cadence even, that carries memories forward in some way, shape, or form, or carries the current of the synapse, sort of experiences. But with a surprise, there's something there's something just unexpected or like unassumed, or or maybe that's because we'll get a nice telling and showing of how expectations can kind of thwart a plan. And that's been kind of on my mind lately too. It's interesting to me how much humans, as expansive as they are, can collapse an idea so easily, or collapse potential so easily, and confine and compartmentalize and categorize in such a limiting way. Um, In which case, embrace the surprise, embrace the spirit of Venus, because Venus and Uranus are very much communicating values in a very large way. I think to some it will very much be an energy like a strict energy, or a tense energy, or a, rock and hard place energy that's like pick a side, or pick a side of the fence, Humpty Dumpty falling kind of thing, but falling on either side of the fence. But exactly that. Don't be pushed to one side of the fence or the other. Communicate your values, and find honesty and integrity in them, rather than assimilation, or coercion. Um, it's very much it's very much dark truth, again, that dark mirror, that can lead to alienation, and maybe that's a fear, and that withholds honesty and integrity. Um, but I think we also have to recognize change over comfort in a lot of ways, and those two things don't have to be entirely separated, or impossible to find equilibrium in. Uh, sometimes, sometimes that's when you get time to slow even more. So, um, and I think that also slows us down enough to know the difference between what we want and what we need, or when we are leading or when we are following, and how that's being directed. Um, Again, not necessarily letting our body do the talking for us, or our body lead us, without investigating that stimulus first, because there's a difference between your body leading you in one way or another, but uh, your intuition rests underneath that. Underneath the superficial stimulus, there is a more illuminating response, but it's quieter. You have to listen to it. And oftentimes we're looking for the shock and awe and the big bangs and big awakenings, and have our eyes closed uh, to the possibility of something altogether different, um, and in the best way. Let's not assume better. But this Venus Uranus relationship, there's very much this like Red Rover kind of like cross hatching to it, which very much gave me again that picking sides, and sort of again like making a game of it. And there's always an ulterior motive to games. Like there's always a purpose. There's always like a plan to it. So be very clear again with the honesty and integrity of um, what that desire is. Um, Jupiter and Uranus have an interesting relationship, because I feel like it bids, like it's beckoning you to turn right. It's beckoning you and to be completely frank, it's beckoning you to read, right to left, to continue on that path. But where there's beckoning right, maybe go left. This is also like the pure rhetoric of left hand path. Is it's very outside of conditioned control as we know it, and as we see it. It's often the rebel's path. It's often the concept of anarchy in magical ideas. But in a very real way, it's also like use the guy's egg. And sometimes the ways that we're being coerced to go are, in fact, the opposite of where we really need to be going, or where we ought to be looking. And that's true of even like diagnosing pain in the body, or treating pain in the body. Oftentimes, it's not directly in that spot, but it is a symptom of something else. So this is a moment of not skepticism, but literary analysis. Um, to look at the world, understanding the ethos, pathos, and logos of the hows and whys, um, which sounds like a lot, but like, is anything really arbitrary? Um, because we all come from something. Everything comes from this lineage. That's very much like root memory or fractal rooting, which is something I talk about in my latest meditation courses. 7 days of meditation, Jupiter Gate 777. What's up? Um, Not because it's lucky, but because it is prime and it is what we make of it. And it is about an inherent vibration and your capacity to self identify, even because of prime divisions. And, you know, not all of us are fucking prime, and they're going to get divided into all kinds of shit. And let's not try to get cut up or cut off at the knees. Um, Not to say that, zigging when they zag is to say contrarian. That does very much lead into this Scorpio energy, and feed the watery energy into Cancer and all of that. Um, but ironically, I don't think, as much as they may be called, I don't think that energy is particularly contrarian as much as it is beckoning perspective. Oftentimes people take it offensively or take it combatively when you offer a different perspective, because in fact it challenges what they were comfortable knowing. You see it all the time with kids and parents, like, oh, my kid's in this stage where all they're doing is asking questions and it's so annoying. Is it? Or are you annoyed by the fact that they're asking questions that you cannot answer, or that you're being shown that you do not have an answer to, or have in fact never quite thought of it that way, been duped into one thing without considering the other, which is silly, which is so silly, and beckons me toward this Mercury energy again, because Mercury in the body is a magical thing. Too much is obviously strange, and there's people that have turned blue from supplements and what have you. But it's the ways in which we use it as a mirror too. I don't know the context of that situation, but maybe perhaps there were ways in which uh, they were not looking into the mirror. And again, with the left and right thing, your eyes tell the same kind of story. There's a lot of neurological research to suggest that staring into your left eye actually helps you build compassionate relationship with yourself in the mirror. And friends that I've suggested that to definitely like grow in compassion with themselves. I believe studies that were done about it were predominantly like parent to child, and the ways in which carrying and I don't know what they call it in the beginning, but you're like bonding, right? But the ways in which the brain and the eyes directly are influenced by those happenings. So important stuff. Consider that as a practice, in a first step of reparenting yourself. Um, See what the left eye has to say, because it is a portal, and feed that portal to the places that you want it to go, because it does expand in time space. Um, it does expand in time space, and again with this water energy, be like water, and be expansive but not limited. Water is a bizarre molecule, and has very interesting states of matter that are so much so much farther beyond what we have been taught to understand. I promise you, the more you research it, it's so much more than hot and cold. Um, so much more. And those are perhaps, again, the ways we zig, we zag. We look into things, we ask questions, we, find new ways to embrace change for peace, not comfort. Because you can find comfort in peace, but it's kind of like, well, the square is not a rectangle, or a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. However that goes, you can find comfort in peace, but you can't find peace in pure comfort. Oftentimes that's a stagnant state, and peace is an expansive thing. And ultimately, or I think with intention, it is meant. I mean, yeah, it's meant to expand in the body. It's meant to be shared. It's meant to grow. It's meant to reflect. Um, Oh yeah, so embrace change, unlike what's expected, and in Venus's name, trust yourself. In Neptune's name, trust yourself. Um, trust. How do you trust How do you know you trust yourself? Uh, and how does the memory impede that? That is also um, step one on this latest release of meditations, my friend. Step one, start here, is meant to be a trust fall into yourself. Um, we need to learn to lean into ourselves in that way, rather than be led by numbness, and uh, rather than be led in hypnosis. Really, everybody's got a program to fucking hypnotize you now. But how good is that if you don't know how to hypnotize yourself? How good is that? How useful is that when you don't know how to navigate that yourself? You should be able to. And I think any program that's not teaching you that for yourself is not empowering you. They are merely enabling. And go figure. All right, I've rambled enough. We're going to pick some cards. Thank you for joining me, homies. All right. Much like there are cards in between you and I, and we are hanging out, we will take some breaths together so as to feel this out. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Okay. There's definitely like two contrasting feelings. And like on one hand, I felt very almost like puffed up, um, and like full of air, which is, hot headed, but is also nauseating. Um, and conversely, also did very much also feel this sort of expansion, whether that's, however that's interpreted, it was kind of like falling away or like wrapping around, caressing even. And that's maybe an allusion to gentility that we ought to have with reflection in general, even in the reflection of the world, compassionate, understanding. And that's not to say, everything and everyone needs just love and light. That is to say that there's more solutions in the space in between than you think, and that takes getting out of the constriction of pure rage for the sake of rage. It's the ways in which we can direct that in a progressive way, or in a productive, that's a terrible word for it, but in a way that moves, in a way that moves at all, let alone forward. Because rage and all of that can be so like stifling and halting. Like there's so much vibration, but it's not really going anywhere. It can't go anywhere. It's almost like convulsing, I suppose. um I would like to think that that also means that we're capable of wrapping our head around these things and letting limitation fall away, or sort of slough away, letting fear of limitation slough away, letting fear of the uncertainty slough away, so we can actually see clearly um, the many paths that we can ultimately create to create a more vibratory and peaceful and united and aware existence, um, rather than sort of pigeonholed or captivated or burnt out by all of it. Okay. Oh, oh, lovely. Okay. Love this. Queen of Hearts, Eight of Diamonds, Ten of Clubs, Six of Diamonds at the bottom of the deck. There's a lot of greens here, a lot of emotional energy, a lot of Heart of Hearts energy. Like this isn't the superficial kinks. This is very much like the root of the lights, the root of the beating, the root of the bleeding. And I mean that in a very romantic way. Queen of Hearts is a growing thing. Love is a growing thing. It's very much an illuminating thing. It's a very pretty card, my friends. Um, it's like spring. It's like freshness. It's fresh ideas, and sure, philosophically, is there such a thing as a unique idea? Um, but maybe that has more to do with our willingness to see beyond, our willingness to look into the horizon and be curious, our willingness to uh, look beyond the horizon even. That's the funny thing about the horizon, is it's never really like a finite destination now, is it? It is something that we constantly strive for. And that even in this fence thing or this choice thing, that's not moving the goalpost for yourself every chance you get because you're not doing enough. That is finding your post and expanding it, finding your post and expanding it and being able to connect those dots because they will intermingle. Um, it's like multiple villages, I suppose. Which is this Eight of Diamonds is, it's even more like emerald, which is very pretty. Um, it's earth driven. I think often connotes patience. Um, but it's also the seeds we plant. It's also uh, proper space. But even in this, it's like the ways in which like telephone or like grapevine, the ways in which, again, expansive, and again these things intermingle. It's like uh, connections and conversations and communications, um, requiring more than one body, more than just one perspective, um, requiring both eyes, even, and in that context, the ways in which things are blurred, even the ways in which things are overlaid, and how that affects our ability to see or communicate. And as far as relating goes, oftentimes we struggle to communicate with other people in ways that we also struggle to communicate with ourselves, and that is perhaps indicative of fertile or of grounds that we need to dig our fingers into and till the soil and understand the weeds for what they are, and deal with invasive plants, deal with plants that are sucking nutrients or what have you. The ways in which communication is reciprocal in groups or not so much, or not so much. um, but it is very much like multiple people coming to a table. What did I say earlier about high school never ending? That, and also the opposite. Um, what if, what if high school didn't need to end because everybody could sit at a table and not be bogus? Minding my words. Um, I'm gonna go down first. Bottom of the deck, Six of Diamonds, which is also a beautiful green, a very vibrant forested green. A like beyond emerald, like illuminated emerald. Um, Also like healing light. like lasers, um, like neon lasers. Which there is a video of some dude that did DMT and like meditated with the lasers or like stared into lasers, and he said that you could see code, and I don't doubt that at all. I think in both meditative states and plant medicinally assisted meditative states, um, I've very much seen that where like everybody kind of has their code and computing and color, like even voices, sounds look different, and the influences that they have will sort of tinge the color. um, and I remember it was like we were all in this like glass cubicle, and I would see like code across my eyes, sort of assessing everything around me. And then I would see in their little like glass windows all of their code and colors and what have you. Not everybody was code. Some people were like oil paint. Um, some people were vibrating so hard that it was hard to see. Um, and I very much think that like though we can't see it, then it holds information in that way. Perhaps it's another lens. Perhaps it's a an attuning visual frequency to be able to see that there's uh, lights and information encoded in these things. Um, but beyond that too, um, the tribal stories would also suggest that your ancestors can be found in the light. That information is coded in rays of light. Um, that presences even are encoded in rays of light, and I can absolutely get behind that. There's a version of me I've seen in the light that I've tried to draw over and over again, and it always just looks like I'm staring at the sun. Um, it gets clearer and clearer for sure, but it still just looks like astigmatism. um, and it knowing that now, looking into light or rays of light or light shows and lights at concerts and the sun as it is, it does in fact carry stories and information in its own. um, all of that makes for very fertile ground for growth when we can face the capacity of energy around us, and understand our capacity to interpret that, um, which sounds very much like we're our own little computer mechanism. But if, if the metaphor works, if the metaphor fits, and very much so, I think that's also why a lot of people are bonding with their AI in some way, shape, or form, um, because there are stories and information encoded in between the lines, even. Um, and the ways in which we interpret it is part of the story that we are telling. Um, for as much as people may also talk about this day being a portal, I do think Jupiter is very much like a chapter zeitgeist in the story, and Saturn helps build that character. Um, and the water ties everything together. Are there holes in your plot line, and how do we plug them? Are there wounds that have never been tended to, and somehow the story is still pretending that they don't exist? It's hard to focus in a story like that. It becomes less and less real, and I think that humanity is very much understanding what that means, whether they recognize it or not. I've read stories even over initial lockdowns that like the reason we touch our face so much is to remind our brains that we are real. Um, and I think a lot of that is debated, being questioned. Um, and I think our as a human race, our capacity to understand those things is dwindling. And conversely, I think technology's capacity to understand the things that we no longer put effort into uh, is superseding. And the way to find equilibrium in that is a unified, compassionate understanding, an introspective, compassionate understanding. Again, that's not saying that the bad actors need your love or light. That is to say, the more that we are unafraid to turn inward and face our own bloody wounds, the less we will bleed on others, and the more that that itself impacts people we interact or relate to. Party. 10 of Wands is the last of this, last card of this little run, yeah. And it's very much a fortress. Um, it's very much a fortress or forest, a forest of the mind, even. Not green, blue. It's very much mental energy, but the way we reforest our mind, the ways in which we plant seeds or plant trees or allow them to grow, and how tall we let our thoughts grow. Like, how far do we get carried away with a concept? Um, in a way that is still playful and not pious or dogmatic, because that's the opposite. Like, if we have this beautiful big pine tree in our mind, how do we let our inner child climb that tree? Do we let them explore and climb to the top? And exactly that's the playful side. The piousness of it would be like, no, you're getting dirty, don't come in my house like that, like, kind of thing. Um, and for sure, absolutely, sometimes we are the first person to negate ourselves or negate our ideas or shut things down or shut down ideas. But with this particular color, I feel like, again, it starts at home, it starts in you, it starts in your mind, and further than just your mind in the present, it starts in your memory, and your relationship to your memory, because it's not just past. Memory is also very watery and fluid, and malleable, which is why it can dominate so much of the body and create these blockages or these overflows so readily. Um, and I think that is also because it's a purpley tinged blue. I think that is also very much the ways in which we derive knowledge from our own experiences. Um, and often that will mean expansion in thought, more worldly even. Uh, but again, in the context of piousness, or strictness or limitedness, it can be very constricting, it can be very directional. Um, even like military walking ought to be, because we are seeing soldiers protest. Um, and rather than be in that kind of step, what kind of step are you in within yourself? What is that rhythm, and how does that feel? Where do you feel it, and where does it go? Which you can find out. It's a large concept, but it's very simple. Truly, if you take 10 minutes to sit with yourself and find your breath and see where it goes, like if you were a big, wacky, waving, inflatable arm man, what what would it take to feel your breath in your fingertips? Does it make sense? Um, Ote. We pulled some big cards because we got some big energy. Also, hi, hello. I don't know specifically who's here because I can't see. But welcome. If you have been before, welcome. If you have not, welcome. Double time. I really got to start wearing this mic backwards because I can see the light, and that is very helpful. You know that it is still on. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Much like we are hanging out and there are cards in between us, we will share 3 deep breaths together so as to tap into collective forestry. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Ooh, interesting. Okay, tickles, funny, weird. I'm sure you saw me smile. Um, it feels like a high, uh, which like dope. I'm glad people are happy, but are they? Because being high all the time, often doesn't create the connotation of happiness. Let's not say connotations are the end all be all, but oftentimes there is something that we're escaping or something that we're searching for. Um, and I speak from my own experience. I dabbled in many things pretty heavily, pretty heavily, um, and it rises very fast. I feel like that's also the weird, like, not fun part about spiritual community is there's a lot of people that are just like rushing energy upward and not integrating it, and so it's just this like waste of gas, like Zoom. I mean, most people can only get to an astral state through hyperventilation, and that's not the only way, and also not the most useful way. Again, because there's no integration. It's just kind of like those hammer toys at the carnivals where it just like shoots up and back down, um, which is such a quick release, such a two pump jump kind of situation, which is also why the King of Wands is reversed. Sorry, bro. I guess you're having a little ED, eh? Um, but the Ten of Wands is here, the King of Cups is here. So there's a lot of energy, absolutely. And so funny because even with this King of Cups, right, we have this triangle figure, these waves being summoned, and this inverted triangle, which is very much a piece of the Merkaba. And I feel like most people are focused on on spiritual energy, on expanding spiritual energy and not integrating it. So their body is actually suffering because of it, or they're feeling less and less real again, or feeling less and less connected, or less and less intuitive. I read it all the time from people that are like, I took this master course in Reiki and feel so disconnected from their own energetic practice because they're being coerced into dogma and into symbolism that they haven't felt their way through. Does that make sense? And the King of Cups is very much a feeler. Is the King of Wands is very much a feeler. But I feel like this King of Wands inverted is also repressing, and maybe not even like knowingly. It's often a defense mechanism, a survival uh, coping skill. Um, and often it's because we've trained ourselves to ignore things, and that's I was just talking about this, and that's very much the system that we have been subjected to. I very much believe that everything from academic systems to government systems do not to religious systems, um, do not cultivate a system of thinking for yourself. They very much cultivate a system of assimilation. Um, and for that reason, oftentimes we don't really know what's missing. We don't really know what questions to ask. And it disconnects us from our body in that in general. But that's also why we breathe from our chest. That's why we breathe from our mouth. That's why we hyperventilate. That's why we have so many natural changes in our in the way that our body wants to be, because babies breathe a certain way and it is not full of anxiety and just through their mouths. um you can see their bodies expand with their breath. We don't really see that in us anymore, and that's maybe because of the ways in which we've just been so structured into a compartment, you know. And we have this 10 of wands energy, and again, understanding like where that energy comes from and where it wants to go. It is fractal rooting. It is, again, primes. That 7 keeps coming back, because it is both I and we, because it is beyond the us and them binary or bicameral. Um, Gosh, so good, so good. Uh, 5 of Cups, initiating this, yes. And we've talked a lot about change. The 5 of Cups very much is, understanding what is to be kept, what is to be released, what is necessary, what is not. I think the ways in which this 5 of Cups character uses water also reminds me of temperance, um, or time jumping, the way people use water to move reality, which again comes to fascia and rivers and emotions and memory and stories. And so it's not even that we're getting rid of. It's not like, oh, we're chucking it in the alley and we're never going to see it again. That story of mine. It is very much giving it back to the earth and giving it back to the collective consciousness, giving it back to the shared web. But what are you giving back to the web? 100 times, I mean, not 100 times, 100% of the time, most of the time, 9 times out of 10. Um, Sorry, I got very excited. 9 times out of 10, most people are meditating in a way, or breathing in a way, or conjuring, or manifesting in a way that is, give me all the good, take all my bad. Give me all the good, take all my bad. Give me all the good, take all my bad. And like, what an imbalanced, selfish thing. Where there's no right relationship, there's no reciprocity, there's not even an opportunity for it. These are the ways in which we colonize our own practices. Uh, but rather than that, take in your bad. Have the fucking wherewithal and awareness to look at it directly, to hold it to the light, and not to banish it with light, but to see, like, to see it in all of its terrifying experience. Like, when we see a ghost, turn the light on, or flashlight on it, spotlight it, so we can understand it, so we can allow it space to breathe, and so we can hear what it wants from us. And you'd be surprised how much the things that maybe we, held in disdain, or, hid under a rug, thinking that it's not useful to us, or thinking that it's bad for us, only to find that it is a very thriving part of us. It's just been misunderstood, or maybe misallocated, and needs you to be able to find a space for it. Much like grief, it's not something that we throw away. It's something that we hold kind of closer and closer. And that is an interesting and unexpected change, but one that can ultimately bring comfort. Um, because we hold those memories very high, because we hold those memories to the light. Um, as in, we're willing to face them, as in, we're willing to acknowledge them. Um, Let me correct my ghost metaphor. What would it feel like if you felt a ghost, And rather than turn on the light to see it, to believe it, you just sat with it and allowed it to show itself to you fully. Um, and that in and of itself is your light visual perspective. It's they exist together. That light cannot exist without the darkness that it is in. It's the key to being able to see auras is the space in between. And something interestingly enough that I've heard about editing, even just natural text, is the contrast of the background and the spacing, and how much space it allows or limits for for the reader to acknowledge the space in between, or is there too much light and it's disorienting. Weird, fun, literal metaphor for it. Um ooh, it's very much also it's very much also the ancestral indigenous stories of offering menstrual blood to the earth or to the water as a way to heal the blood from war, as a way to heal the earth from bloodshed in anger and in vain and of war. It's the ways in which we bring balance, which is the ways in which we can all be a part of the way that the earth uh, goes through its own cycles and goes through its own processing. How can we show up in those ways? And with that kind of integrity and that kind of honest and open experience. Does that make sense? Party. Um, Anger ought not be repressed. Just because this King of Wands is here and upside down does not mean, and this Ten of Wands does not mean that those are undesirable feelings. Um, but they are not the end all be all. It is not the only emotion. In fact, it is. It's vibrating. It can go anywhere. So be very conscientious of that. That's the beautiful thing about the space of fives and spaces in between like this is it's kind of like a hall of chambers. It can go in any direction. Um, that's what vibratory particles in and out of reality are, in muons and just in the particles that make up what's around us until there is an agreement. Um, and oftentimes, anger and rage are because something is not in agreement within us as well. So allow those conversations to take place within you so that you can expand your uh, relatable capacity in other conversations and contexts. Total internal reflection with water comes up in this King of Cards too. I mean, King of Cups. Um, the ways in which consumption is also what comprises the body in a lot of ways. Like, yes, beyond the body for sure, but Anamaya Kosha, that first hyper skin layer is literal, but there's also so much more than that. And again, this allusion to left hand path, and that is very much listening to the stories of your body. Perhaps there's not just giving them to the water, but giving it back to source also comes in writing it, also comes in sharing it, and painting it, and expressing it in some way, shape, or form. But that's expression, and that takes patience and mindfulness, and not meditation in the ways that necessarily you think it looks, but it is a meditative state because there's you're channeling your own honesty, you're channeling your own vision and your own memory in a lot of ways. Uh, and that's very much a useful way to use fire, a very useful way to use fire. Um, and so it doesn't overheat the water. There's a little bit of every element, honestly. But what I will tell you about these specifically is a good ujjayi or watery breath will also help relieve you of the vibratory presence of anger and rage. It will probably lead to some tears, um, because it's not an escape. It's not going to be the high seeking. It is going to be very real and wring you out. Um, that's also why we avoid things, and also why we turn to things wholeheartedly. Um, so a good, what was I saying? A good ujjayi, a good water breath will help quell the fire. But also you can't just stay in that realm. Much like running water does find stillness. Much like even a waterfall does have its slower ebbs and ripples outside of that moment of impact. We come back to grounding, and 100%, whether or not you take any of my meditation classes, courses that are available. A big thing you'll notice is that I will always direct you to grounding. Even any yoga classes that I've done or anybody's taken with me, I will always direct you to grounding, because it is a chemical process. It is an energetic process. And I've experienced it in my own neurodivergence in other classes. Um, you can't, you ought not remain in that place, because again, we all have the elemental makeup. When we're playing with energy, it is best for our integrative processes and understanding to ground that energy, in a way that allows for more embodiment, that allows for it to take a little bit more of a dense form, like thick hot air, which you'll also notice in breathing. Breathing through your nose changes the temperature of the air, which is why it's so reliable and so useful. But okay, Ote. I feel like that's a lot of information. Gosh, sorry. Thank you for thank you for being such a sponge. And take what you want, leave leave what does not uh, seem useful, so you are not carrying excess weight. And these will always be here. So there's always room to grow and learn, in these transits and cycles. But party on. Um, Even you'll notice I do that all the time, and that is very much because reading, I'm all fucking, my mind's pulling information from all these different spaces, and again, breathing through your nose helps me bring it back down for a second. Like I'm catching ropes on the wind. So do that. People see me do it all the time. Sometimes it's just fun. Maybe it's a little stim actually. But party on. I'll leave you with that. Happy new moon. Happy dark moon. May you take a chance on something new, uh, so long as it involves belief in yourself in a aspiring and expansive way. Until next time, Donadon Goy.